Speaker, I've listened very carefully to all of the answers the Prime Minister gave during this lengthy exchange today. I've listened very carefully to what members on all sides of the House have said, and it's very clear that it is very bad, unacceptable that we should be waiting almost a month before we have a meaningful vote on a crucial issue facing the future of this country. The Prime Minister has obdurately refused to ensure that a vote took place on the date she agreed. She refuses to allow a vote to take place this week and is now, I assume, thinking the vote will be on the 14th of January, almost a month away. This is unacceptable in any way whatsoever. So, Mr. Speaker, as the only way I can think of ensuring a vote takes place this week, I am about to table a motion which says the following: that this House has no confidence in the Prime Minister due to her failure to allow the House of Commons to have a meaningful vote straight away on the withdrawal agreement and framework for future relationships between the UK and the European Union. And that will be tabled immediately, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank the Leader of the Opposition for what he's said. It requires no response from me, but it's on the record. And I move to the next point of order, which is from the Honourable and Learned Lady. Point of order, Joanna Cherry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to a couple of questions from my honourable friends, the Prime Minister has implied that Scottish National Party MPs and the Scottish Government were aware at the time the bill was brought that the UK withdrawal from the EU Legal Continuity Scotland Bill was out with the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. I'm sure the Prime Minister has inadvertently overlooked the fact that last week the UK Supreme Court passed judgment in the case, the Attorney-General's reference about this case, and found in actual fact that the bill was within the competence of the Scottish Parliament when passed, all save one section, Section 17, and that it was only the subsequent enactment of the EU Withdrawal Act which retrospectively took powers away from the Scottish Parliament to mean that the bill was no longer within its powers. Mr. Speaker, Tory members of the Scottish Parliament have been peddling misinformation about the Supreme Court judgment, and there have been a number of inaccurate media reports over the last few days. I am certain that the Prime Minister would not mean to perpetuate misunderstandings about a judgment of the United Kingdom Supreme Court, and I seek your guidance on how I can put the matter straight and on the record in this respect. Thank you.
Let me say to the Honourable and Learned Lady that I think that she has found her own salvation. She is aware of the device. One might almost go so far as to call it a ruse of an attempted but in practice bogus point of order to get across a particular point which is dear to her head and her heart. And she succeeded in that mission with admirable clarity and eloquence. The point is on the record, and it will be read in the official report, and I have a sense that the Honourable and Learned Lady will seek to spread copies of the official report far and wide in her own constituency and doubtless beyond. So far as ministers are concerned, including the Prime Minister, it is of course incumbent upon any minister who thinks he or she may inadvertently have given incorrect information to the House to correct the record. Whether in this case it is decided to do so is not a matter for me, but I hope that she feels that she has achieved her objective this afternoon. Point of order, Mr Tom-Brake.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, over the weekend it became very clear that the Prime Minister has some strong views on certain things, one of them being Tony Blair, which I know she shares with the Leader of the Opposition, and also the merits of a people's vote, again something that she shares with the Leader of the Opposition. However, Mr Speaker, however intense the Prime Minister's antipathy towards a people's vote is it in order for her to leak chunks of her speech in advance of her coming here to the House to make the statement, which contains the same chunks of her speech as was leaked to the press at 10:30 last night?
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving me notice that he wished to raise this matter. Certainly I agree wholeheartedly and without equivocation with the proposition that announcements of government policy should be made in this House and should not be pre-announced to the media. This is not just a courtesy expected of the government, but an important principle. I think it fair only to add, in response to the right honourable gentleman, however, that the government might in this case argue that the number 10 press release to which the right honourable gentleman referred contained no announcement of government policy. It merely reiterated what the Prime Minister told the House last week. I do understand the sense of disquiet, even irritation, that the right honourable gentleman feels, but I think in the name of even-handedness it is reasonable for me to put that second point on the record to sit alongside and to be judged against the first. Yes, of course. I will come to it. I'm saving him up. I don't want to squander the honourable gentleman too early. Point of order, Mr. Frank Field.
Given your record, Mr. Speaker, as being a real champion of backbenchers against both front benches, is there a way which those of us who want to move to a vote on what the options are open to the country if we don't support the government motion, which has been delayed by now a month, would have the opportunity of expressing our views to see whether there's agreement in the House for one or more lines of attack before we rise for Christmas?
I indicated last week that there were two means by which the vote could be deferred. And without rehashing all of that for the right honourable gentleman or others, he will recall that I thought that there was a preferable way to do it and a much less preferable way to do it. The government chose the course that it did, and as things stand, its course appears to be set. I also explained to the House, and with a view to people outside this House, that whatever the Chair might think about matters of procedure, the Chair must operate within the powers of the Chair. Manifestly, the Chair cannot act ultra vires. The clear evidence is, and the precedents all support this, that an order of the day in respect of a piece of government business can be moved only by a representative of the government, that is to say, a minister or a government whip. So I was able to express some disquiet on behalf of many members across the House at the sudden deferral of the vote, but I was not in a position to bring about the continuation of the debate or the vote upon it. When the right honourable gentleman asks what recourse he has, is there any recourse he has, I suppose what I would say to the right honourable gentleman is that it's always possible for members to table motions in this House. I'm not exhorting him to do so, and nor am I discouraging him from doing so. The right honourable gentleman is extremely experienced, and he knows that that option exists. He has a motion on the paper. He can seek to gather support for that motion, or if another motion that is judged to be pertinent to his objectives is tabled, he can seek to garner support for such an approach. My role is to serve this House. I would be perfectly happy to chair debates over the Christmas period. I would be perfectly happy to come back on the 2nd of January and to sit in this chair. Millions of people are going to be working on the 2nd of January. We could do that, but it's not for me to say when the House should sit, when it should debate and when it should vote. That has to be determined by others, but I am here to serve, and if the House decided that it wanted to proceed at a different rate, at a faster pace, it would be my responsibility to be here, and I would gladly accept that responsibility. Point of order, Mr. Frank.
Further to that point of order, Mr. Speaker, would you be in order if one or more of the opposition parties gave their time early in the new year so that we could reassemble and vote on the 6 or so options you might actually choose? Would that be in order even if the government hadn't moved their own amendment?
My sense is that for the date upon which the House sits to be changed would very likely require a conversation. I am speaking, I say to the right honourable gentleman, for the avoidance of doubt, off the top of my head. It almost certainly would require a conversation and agreement between the usual channels. And if there were such an agreement, nothing is impossible. The right honourable gentleman will know that there is a supply of opposition days, but the government will normally give an indication of when there will be an opposition day, and that is usually a matter of negotiation between the two sides. It's not something on which the Speaker can rule. But I don't say that what he is suggesting is impossible, and what I am suggesting is that there seems to be some distance to travel between his aspiration and its realisation.